Hey guys, Mikey here, your Creature Club co-host. I just want to say before the episode starts, I am so sorry about my audio in this episode. I messed up something and I sound like I'm recorded on a potato now. So I try my best to edit it around and make it sound listenable, and I think it sounds pretty good. And we decided to keep the episode because it's a good episode. So that's really it. Thank you so much for listening, guys, and enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to the fourth installment in the Creature Club podcast. I am Tim Porter.
I'm Daniel.
And I'm Mikey DC.
Oh God, I didn't give my surname. I feel really informal now.
Oh yeah, come on. Well, no one's gonna know. It's okay. It's too late now.
Okay, yeah, you're right. It's too late. I'm so sorry. Sorry.
It's too late now, Mr. White. Oh wait, sorry.
Oh Jesus. Oh God. Now I feel like my dad.
Gentlemen, please, order. So today we will be continuing our talk about the angels in the Monster Manual for 5th edition
Tim,
Dungeons and
what is Creature Club?
Creature Club is a podcast wherein we talk about monsters in various RPGs. We are starting off with Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and we will be scrolling through alphabetically the Monster Manual. And today we will be talking about the Planetar and Solar subclass of the Angels archetype.
It's angles, actually, Tim.
Oh shoot! Restart. Hit the red button. Turn it off.
Turn it off. Stop recording. Cut the film. So yeah, this is a part two of part two of our Angels kind of
Angles
anthology, our Angles anthology series. So if you want to hear about Devas and a little bit about the lore of Angels, then that's on the part one of this. If you haven't heard it already, but we're gonna just hop in right back into it and just start with Planetar, which I think that's how it's pronounced, or is it Planetar? Planetar sounds
Jesus.
cooler.
If it's Planetar, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I legitimately
I don't know who I am if that's what it is.
Planetar is a terrible name.
Planetar is a
actually.
very
Planetar.
bad name.
Yeah, so Planetar sounds a lot cooler.
Yeah, Planetar.
So, right, the Planetar looks pretty cool. He's a guy with a sword.
That's pretty cool. Oh, sweet.
And that was Creature Club, guys. Thanks for listening this week.
So the Planetars are the soldier race of the angels. They typically represent the wrath of whatever god that they represent. They are larger than the Devas, as they are meant to be a bit more intimidating and powerful.
They can call down rain to relieve a drought and can loose an insect plague to devour crops.
My crops!
Oh shit, my crops!
My crops of cabbages have all been destroyed.
Oh, they're called crops now.
They have been devoured by this plague of insects.
These are some interesting words. Planetar's celestial airs detect every.
All right, that's enough. That's enough. Dude, we've gone too far.
We've gone too deep now. We can't get out of this.
We've gone too deep. Tim, you've done your research. Tell us about Planetars.
Yes. Well, the Planetar was a word coined in the 1960s for kind of dwarf stars. They were called brown dwarfs because black dwarf already represented a white dwarf that had gone dark. So they were enormous stars or near stars that hadn't quite got to the mass where they could collapse and cause consistent fusion. So they were powerful enough to draw in stuff, but they weren't powerful enough to emit enough light. So that is the origin of the word. But the Planetars were taken from that as a kind of homage to the kind of almost insidious power kind of thing of it. Like, they aren't the forefront of what you would see representing a god. Typically that would be the Devas or the Solars. But the Planetars were this big, scary thing that you knew was out there, but that wasn't typically seen.
Cool. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was dwarf star. I thought it was just like a cool name for a D&D monster.
I mean, it is both of those things.
Yeah.
It is also a really cool name for a brown dwarf, because like a brown dwarf is kind of boring. But if you call it a planetar, which is a term coined by the guy who kind of theorized them, and he just jumped straight on into it, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. That was a great bit of knowledge.
Anytime, boys.
We're too deep. We are way too deep.
I think that's our last one. I think we've got it out of our system now.
Says you.
He says me. Yeah, that's fair. Sorry. I was only going to say that I don't know if you remember, but in the last episode when we talked about Davis, they showed up in Dragon Magazine 63. Okay. The Planetar and also the Solar, who we'll probably cover in this episode, are just from 64. They were literally right after it. Similar.
He's like, that's one angel's good.
Yeah,
do another one.
Well, even in the Deva article, he talks about how like I'll cover these two in the next one. So he obviously had like written ahead and was just producing them at a reasonable rate. But yeah, I just thought like
makes sense.
Very much the same story as we've described before with the Devas, produced and like originally conceived and designed by Gary Gygax. Given that he was generally kind of a well-read person, I would assume that he might have known about Planetars from sci-fi reading. I apologize. But I actually don't know exactly where he got the name. But yeah, like there you go. I just thought I'd mention that like that's where they're from as well.
Pretty reasonable assumption to assume that he found that and like thought, oh, that's a really cool word, but also concept.
Yeah, I mean it's a great sounding word. So I can totally get that. Mm-hmm. The only thing I thought I'd mention about the lore of the creatures, and this is something that comes up in Solars as well, which actually is sort of cool. Planetars, it basically says like there are this is kind of weirdly phrased, not fewer than 100. Does that make sense? So I think the idea is that there's about 100 Planetars like ever. Which is sort of cool. I like it. I think that feels very inspired by sort of the Bible, where it talks about the idea that there's like I think 7 archangels or something. Yeah. Like the same idea of like there's a fixed number of these powerful divine creatures because just like the fabric of the universe can only like hold so many.
The Solars, as you said, have something similar, but we'll get to them.
Yeah, but like it's just like I thought it was kind of cool. I sort of like that idea. I like that as a thing you tell the players. You know what I mean? Like when they're fighting this monster, and you say like, oh, there's only 78 Solars in existence or Planetars in existence. Everybody know. Like the old tales tell us that the first god who made the Planetars could only make 78 because he gave them each a piece of his power or whatever. Like whatever your explanation is, it's a little bit cool. It numbers them, and that's immediately like interesting. And even like that, like this is literally again off the top of my head, but like actually now that I've said that, the idea that they're numbered, I like the idea that they actually have like a tattoo or a brand somewhere on their body that has what number they are, because that'd be cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
But yeah, like that's like very, very small thing, really sort of background, but yeah, like those things are cool and like they can excite your players, and there's no reason that we shouldn't talk about them. But I'm hungry. Let's get to the meat and potatoes, which is our term for getting into the stat block.
Yeah, meat and potatoes. So I remember I brought this up in the last episode, but those stats. Wow, look at those.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
they are.
Strength's 24.
They're pretty scary.
Where I'd say a really good strength stat for like a regular player, if you guys don't really know, would be like 20. That would be like really good.
Would be reasonably actually the maximum for a player in 5th edition.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that without any kind of magical influence, I think there is a set limit at 20. Like you're not supposed to.
As a general rule, players can't go higher than 20 except for like very, very unique abilities.
Yeah. And pretty much all of this guy's stats are over 20, with the exception of intelligence, but that's 19, so that's like one off.
Yeah. So I think what's also cool is I like comparing the Planetar to the Deva because he's just better. I actually think that's a really nice touch. He's got like better armor, he's got more health, he's faster both on the ground and in the air. And he's stronger, he's got better dexterity, like he's just better. And I kind of like, I'm not normally a huge fan of like, strict upgrade monsters, necessarily because I think it's like a little bit, it's not as exciting, but like this feels really appropriate, right? The idea that like the Devas, oh, you thought they were bad? No, they were the messengers. This is the guy who's coming to kick your ass. Like it feels really appropriate.
Like looking at the Devas, like they are tough, but they're nothing in terms of angels. They're like the lowest of the low.
They are literally the lowest angels. I just think that's
and they're so powerful in their own way, but like not compared to these guys.
Although they do have, as we kind of read down the rest of the block, they have the exact same damage resistances and condition of
yes,
immunity
they do.
As the Deva.
Yeah, they have the same things there. Then they've got the same thing as the Devas, where they can speak all language and they're also telepathic. And
they do have true sight as opposed to dark vision, which is a little bit of a bump up for them.
Yeah.
Their passive perception.
What's true sight? Do you guys know?
True sight is that you can see through invisibility.
Okay, all right, makes sense.
It's the idea is like you see the truth of things. Let's see here. They automatically detect evil, illusion, invisibility, lie, magic, or traps. That's how they worked in AD&D. They automatically detect all those things. So obviously the idea was like they kind of summarized that as just giving it true vision, true sight, which just means you can't deceive it.
The thing that you said about lie there, like it's divine awareness, one of its feats.
Yeah.
The Planetar knows if it hears a lie.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Which is so cool. The Deva, I'm looking at, the Deva does not have that.
No,
so
it doesn't,
very, like, you just can't lie to it. Like, and just, so get your bard out of there.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the only thing that would annoy me. Like, while encountering a Planetar, your bard is basically just there to, I don't know, flirt with them, I guess.
That's all. That's bards lie and flirt. That's all they do.
Yeah. And play music occasionally.
Yeah, so, like, as you said, Dan, regular old upgrade guy, his angelic weapon, it's a couple more dice. Its healing touch is a couple more dice as well.
Yeah.
It has some of the same kind of spells as the Deva, but it has
blade barrier. It has flame strike. I think it has dispel good and evil, whereas the Deva could only detect good or evil. And then its control weather and insect plague are both unique to it.
Yes, and that goes back to that little flavor text in
exactly.
paragraph where it says that it can call down rain or whatever. So that's pretty cool.
But once again, we see that this angel doesn't have like teleport or plane shift or a spell that actually lets it return to its plane, which I don't really think is a big deal at all. It's interesting to see that like it's I suppose it's consistent in a way. Like neither of them have been given this thing. I mean, maybe the idea is that like it works differently. It's not a spell or whatever. But I do think it's surprising that it doesn't even get described like, oh, by the way, a Planetar can freely move between its plane, the plane of its god, and the mortal plane or whatever.
Yeah. But also, it's again limited, just like the Deva is, to commune with God once a day. So if it uses its power to cause an insect plague or to control the weather, it kind of turns off its ability to commune with its god for a day.
It says one a day each, Tim.
Yeah. Oh, each. My
That's
mistake.
okay.
One a day. Oh, jeez. Oh, gosh.
Now everyone's gonna.
I'm so embarrassed.
Yeah, this is like we're supposed to be the Monster Manual guys, and this happens. Not Tim.
That was the last time Tim arrived on Creature Club.
Now you're gone, Tim. Don't worry about it. You all make mistakes.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. But so he has a great sword. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. Oh, nice one, Dan. Nice one.
Thanks, guys.
If you were here, I'd have
Yeah. Well, it's kind of pretty much just like, as you said, a better Deva.
Yeah.
You know? It's just an upgrade, and he's meant to be like the guy, one of the guys, like kind of the foot soldier guys, for your angel.
Yeah, he isn't the messenger. Although even though it does all that, charisma is their highest stat, so they are kind of, I guess, they have a strong force of personality even if they don't use it.
Yeah. I guess it's just the angelic nature,
Yeah, and unlike the Planetar, the Deva cannot change shape. So the Deva is better suited for blending in or delivering messages, but the Planetar, it can either be a Planetar or it has the ability to turn itself invisible at will. So it can either be a Planetar or an invisible Planetar, but it can't be anything else.
If a Planetar is coming after you, you know it is here.
It does also mention that sometimes Planetars are sent to aid to powerful mortals to aid in tasks of good. So it does kind of hint that you could use them as an ally for the party.
You could summon a bunch of angels.
So I guess we should talk about sort of this boy in terms of how you would fight him, or how you'd use him in a fight, or how you'd use him in an encounter, how you use him as an enemy. So I think we're gonna have to. I think we'll hit a lot of the same notes we hit with the Deva. So obviously, the Planetar is. The Planetar described in the Monster Manual is lawful good, which means that, if it's opposed to the party, it's either because they're doing something that is like chaotic or against some rule of the angel, or because they are a party of evildoers and like they're, mucking things up. I don't know which is more likely, to be honest. I don't know what I have literally no idea what the ratios are. I think it's much more. I think it's like my instinct says it's more likely that like a party of like heroes of good players like would need to do something that would bring them in opposition to an angel.
Yeah.
Like like maybe. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but like I suppose
I've played many games where my players have done plenty of stuff to oppose good forces, because players are they can be what's the word, terrible.
I mean, yeah, fair enough.
Straight up evil.
Yeah. just terrible people.
Having them fight alongside you would be pretty immense as well. It could be like if you use them with a lower level party just to kind of introduce them to the like more powerful elements in the world, to kind of give them something to either look up to or to kind of be in awe at for like this enormous power or whatever it's representing. Like in the game that we played, I had Helena, who was a captain of a guard, kind of a paladin, just blast a whole bunch of guys as like I didn't need to do that for you guys, but it was kind of like if it was a new party, they would see that and maybe it would make them kind of either fear or like understand the kind of powers that are in the world that like they can get
I
to.
wasn't scared.
Oh, well, Helena was on your side.
I'm scared of no paladin.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
Yeah, I was a bit scared. I'm afraid of ghosts as well. So
challenge rating 16 is pretty hefty. Like that's late game if you're going to be challenging it.
I agree. I actually like this is something I mentioned at Davis, but part of me does feel that like you could effectively half the CR of all of the angels and they would still be appropriately CR'd. Or sorry, it's not. Sorry, I keep saying CR because in Pathfinder it's challenge rating, but in 5th edition it's just challenge. It's not clear.
Yeah.
What's its challenge number? Like, what's your power level?
Yeah, I think it's called challenge rating as well. It just says challenge on the block.
Yeah, that's fair. Just as long as it's like clear what I'm talking about. Just because like when you actually look at them, like the Deva has a challenge rating. I suppose if we say that's okay, out of 10, then the Planetar has 16, and then the Solar, which I won't spoil too much of, but has 21. So if you literally halved all of those, you'd have 5, 8, and 10, or 5, 8, and 11 if you want to be a little more generous, and that's still pretty strong, given that these are supposed to be like the servants of high powers, whereas they're almost high powers in and of themselves.
A lot of campaigns don't tend to get high enough for these these monsters to be used. So if you want to just fit them in somewhere, you can totally do that. Just drop the challenge rating. The
only thing I was going to mention actually is if there is any interest in sort of using angels, against the party, and like they're getting high level or whatever, like my actual advice would be to go to 4th edition. We mentioned, I think briefly in the last episode, that 4th edition has like very different angels to 3.5 of Pathfinder.
Yeah, there's like angels of protection, angels of battle. They're kind of like a little bit more generic.
Yeah,
that's what
I would say I would definitely agree with that. But I only mention them because they have stat blocks for angel minions. So if you don't know, minions were kind of invented in 4th edition, and they're effectively a monster, and they're a normal monster in every respect, except they only ever have one hit point. So they'll always die in a single hit, but the rule is that like they can't be hit by kind of area of attack. So like if you fireball a group of them and they roll, if they successfully save against it and attack like that, they don't take half damage, they just take no damage. But if you do hit them with something, they die. They always die in one hit, and that's kind of like their defining feature. So they're kind of like, they're great for sending in swarms against the party to make them feel really like they're just cutting through loads of enemies. And just because these enemies are all so high level, I feel like minions are a really good like natural companion to them, I guess. I would find it very difficult to imagine a situation where, say, the players are fighting like multiple Planetars and Devas, because they're all so challenging that like it just seems like it would become a real slog.
Yeah, you just need like generic angels.
Yeah,
like,
basically,
guys with wings with swords. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like imps.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of.
Little fat babies with with bows.
So the ones listed in the fourth edition are just called Angels of Valor, and they're the sort of minions, and they're basically the exact same. Like they've got fairly similar stats to the Deva, with the exception just being they've got a single health point. That's it.
Man, I loved minions. I love using them. They're really cool.
They're very, very good at what they do, and they deserve respect for that. Just while we're talking about 4th edition, there's one other thing I want to mention, which is one of the angels described in 4th edition is called the Angel of Vengeance.
Okay.
So the Angel of Vengeance is basically, they are effectively an assassin in angel form. Mm-hmm. Their job is to hunt down and destroy someone specifically who has wronged a deity.
Okay.
So...
Nice. That's kind of dark.
It's pretty dark, yeah. And they're a pretty cool enemy. I didn't want to go into too much detail, but they have one specific ability which I think is really fucking cool, and I think would be really cool on a Planetar if you wanted to say that the Planetar was the equivalent, basically like an executioner for a god who's coming after you because you've pissed him off too many times.
Okay, throw it on us.
So the ability is called Sign of Vengeance. The range of this ability is just within sight of the angel. It places an invisible sign upon the target until the end of the encounter. As a move action, the angel can teleport adjacent to the target.
Oh man!
So just to say, so in 5th edition terminology, because obviously move actions don't exist, that would be instead of spending they can spend all of their movement to teleport adjacent to the target.
That's terrifying.
I know, but it's so cool, right? Like you literally cannot run.
No.
You cannot move fast enough to get away from this angel. So I just thought like that's so scary, and I really like that. So I just thought like the angels in 4th edition, they're fine. I don't want to like badmouth them, but they're different. They're very different to the 5th edition ones. But like this specific power I saw, and I just thought that's very exciting. Like that's really something that you want. Like you like I think that like that changes a fight to be so much more iconic. Yeah. Because the angel isn't just fighting the party, right? The angel's not like, oh, you're in the woods and roll the random encounter table, an angel, and like he shows up and he he's like, you desecrated a temple, I'm gonna beat you up, and you're like, well, we'll beat you up, and then you fight and you roll some dice at each other for a while, and then the angel falls over. Like it's the angel shows up and points at one of the players and says like, you're dead.
You were already dead.
Yeah. And, yeah, exactly. And then he just keeps going after him, and like every turn they intercept the angel, or like the player tries to get away, and every turn just teleports next to him, right there. And like, I just think that's so exciting, and it's very weird. And like, obviously, like if hey, every round he teleports next to Jim, like stand next to Jim and you can hit the angel. Like, it's not hard to strategize against. The problem is that if Jim is dying, you can't there's very little you can do.
So yeah, DMs, try that on your Planetars. Throw that power on. See if homebrew. Make a little homebrew.
Yeah, so that's a pretty straightforward kind of addition. You could even sort of like what I might do is I might make it that it's like a class ability described, and then I might give them an action, which is that they can teleport and then do one attack. So like rather than saying that their movement is teleport and then they can multi-attack, maybe just say that like they can teleport and then they get one attack instead of two. So like it's still, maybe there's a bit of a trade-off or whatever. But it's very much, that's up to the DM to decide.
Yeah. That's a lot on the Planetar, and we have a lot of ground to cover. So let's.
We do, yeah. Actually, we haven't even got onto the boy.
Yeah, like we're on a time limit here. So let's go on to our next boy.
Our biggest and most powerful boy.
I am so excited about this guy, guys. I did a little bit of reading on him, and he has some really cool powers. Well, let's just read a little bit about him. He's almost like, as the first sentence here, a solar is godlike in its glory and power. So it's almost basically like a god in its power.
Yeah.
It's so yeah, as you guys mentioned before, they're kind of, I think you mentioned it on the other episode, or we just talked about it, but they're like the archangels, really,
Yeah.
They're the head honchos of the angels.
Yeah. And the kind of solar idea is obviously like a central star that kind of planets are revolving around, whereas the planetars were the kind of smaller stars that never quite got that spark of light. So it's a cool representation of like the progression in kind of size and power. But also the solar angels represents when a person dies, and in the lore of this, their soul would ascend into heaven. And a solar angel is somebody like a paladin or something who had died. Their soul would inhabit the body of an angel, or they would become an angel, and that's what a solar angel is. They're solar, you know.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I thought that was really cool when I had done my little bit of research.
Yeah. So in this description here, as we mentioned before, it says that like it is said that only 24 solars exist, which again is the specific number that is, which is cool. And just as a point of reference, that is also described in the initial description of the monster in the Dragon Magazine 64. It specifically says that there are 24
Super
solars.
Dragon Magazine 64.
So it's a nice touch that they've kind of kept that specific number as well.
And also kind of gives like the other players like there's 24 of them. Maybe we can do that. Like we might be able to do that. Like
we could take them.
Yeah, we can take 24. Not at the same time, but
it says 24, but I'd imagine that would be like kind of a suggested upper limit. Like if you only said that there were like 7 or some significant number, that would be like either easy to like remember the names of, or like so that if you hear like the name of one of the solars mentioned, it's pretty impactful because they are a big old influence in the world representing their gods.
Yeah.
I mean, they could even be effectively like there is one per good god, or even one per god, and like they're each effectively like the mightiest general under that god, and they all have their own names, and they're like personalities on their own, like the god.
Yeah. And if we kind of toyed with the idea of the fallen angel as well, like with the idea of Lucifer again, if a solar was a fallen angel, it would be like if you were to use it as an evil one, or even in the idea of this fallen angel has kind of struck the earth and has been cast out, it would be like a really cool way to either give a twist to maybe even one of your own player characters. Like if somebody is playing someone who doesn't have any memory because somebody maybe was kind of new to it and didn't know what they were doing, later on in the game you might even suggest to them that like they are this fallen angel, this like fallen solar representation of the god that they represent.
Yeah.
Do we want to jump into some meats or potatoes?
Is it time for dinner?
I'm so excited to read these actions, but let's, first of all, once again, large creature, a lot of health, big stats, even bigger stats this time.
Yeah,
like
as the Planetar before it, it's better. It's just the Planetar, and it's better in every way.
30 charisma. You don't need 30 charisma. No one needs 30 charisma, but yet this guy has it. So just better, same kind of stuff going on.
Just better.
But here's what I want to get into here, because as it says in the paragraph, on the battlefield, the solar sword flies into the fray on its own. So when I first read that, I was like, okay, that means that he goes in with a sword and he's able to fight him because he's so powerful, able to fight like an army. That's cool. But no, it's quite literally, he has a flying sword. He takes out his sword and has like the it's able to like fly around on its own. So and he has a longbow as well. So basically, he would take out his sword. He'll start floating. He'll start cutting down your guys, your dudes, while he's just there in the back with a bow. And that's ridiculous. That's so cool.
That longbow as well has its own specific set of rules to it, which are pretty intense, and we'll get to that once we get into his actual actions.
Yeah, why don't we just step back a little bit there, boys? Stop eating your meat. You gotta eat your potatoes too.
You gotta
potatoes first. You gotta eat things.
You do. So very, very similar stats to like in terms of obviously better than the Planetar, but it's got the same immunities. It's got some extra ones though. It's immune to necrotic and poison, so it can't be poisoned, and obviously it's immune to basically like death magic and like negative energy. Which is a great way of representing sort of that they're just like divine light given form, effectively.
If you're like a bad dude, if you're like a necromancer, you can't do anything on this guy,
Yeah, exactly. And then they've got the same spells as your man, Planetar, except they don't have insect plague.
Your man. Okay, that's weird though.
Sorry. Yeah, they don't have insect blade, but they do have control weather.
Resurrection.
But they also have resurrection.
Yeah, I was just saying that. That's a powerful spell, but that's like.
Can I read out what resurrection does?
Go ahead.
I think the first line of the first paragraph of resurrection is so cool. You touch a dead creature that has been dead for no more than a century, that didn't die of old age and isn't undead. If its soul is free and willing, the target returns to life with all of its hit points. I just think that is so cool. No more than a century. Your party could spend 70 years trying to find a Solar to bring their friend back.
Yeah.
And still have time to get him back.
That's also a cool, like, you can use it almost narratively.
Yeah.
Where you can
bring back the old king.
Yeah, bring back the old king, or even bring back your old party members.
Ooh, very good.
Where
very
if you want to play, let's say you have a cool world and a cool setting going on, and you like your old characters, and it's been years. It's been like a century, or even just under a century for this spell.
Yeah, just under a century, yeah.
So they bring them back, and just like, it's basically kind of like time travel, but not really. They're literally back from the dead.
Yeah, it's just one directional time travel, basically.
And it's just like, what happened? Like, and then like, let me tell you.
All you have to do is die.
Yeah, it also mentions the spell closes all mortal wounds and restores any missing body parts. Which is kind of interesting, because obviously you could have, like, you know, the only thing left of him was whatever, right? Like, you know, we would get, like, I don't know, I'm just going to use your name, DC, I hope you don't mind. We would get DC back from the dead, but Urgosh the Destroyer decapitated him and threw us his head as a reminder, and then burned his body, so we're sort of shit out of luck. And the angel's like, no, I got it, bro.
So he just touches my head, and then, like, a body just grows out of my head. Like a
pops out.
Turnip. I don't know.
Nice one.
Perfect.
That's a pretty powerful spell. Just
also just really cool. Like, just like the fact that Solars have resurrection is enough to set a campaign in motion. That's incredible. Like, that's amazing. Any monster that does that is amazing. Any monster that's enough on their own to start a campaign is very cool. I'm just going to mention this. I know that it might feel like I'm kind of repeating myself, but again, no teleportation, no plane shift. It doesn't even have, and this is the thing that I thought was unusual. Actually, sorry, it does have the legendary action, but we'll get to those. But doesn't have the ability to summon other angels. Which I thought was
that's a good point.
Like, I mean, I would think that, like, the obvious one would be, like, summon monster. And then maybe it says, when it summons monsters, it has to summon angels, because it's calling its backup.
Maybe it's just, like, you know, a given that he can call on other angels.
No,
you know?
It could either be a given that, like, however this thing shows up, it's brought its friends. Or it could be a given that, like, if it shows up on its own, it's fine.
He doesn't need other angels. I don't know, like, he really doesn't.
He just has a beautiful singing voice, and he can bring anyone he wants at any time. He just sings like, la, and then suddenly there's a whole bunch of angels. They recognize
That's
his
my
headcanon.
Yes, absolutely. So we've all been good. So now we're going to talk about the normal actions first, and then we'll get onto the legendary actions.
Yes.
Tim, do you want to talk about the bow, because you mentioned it?
Yeah, the slaying longbow. It has a pretty ridiculous effect if you're fighting him, or if the fight has been going on for any amount of time at the kind of level that you would be challenging him. So if the target is a creature that has 100 hit points or fewer, it must succeed on a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or die.
Oh my god.
DC 15 isn't impossible, especially at the kind of level that you would be challenging a Solar. But that is a frightening thing. It's not
very
like,
frightening.
Oh, they fall unconscious. They're dead. They're dead.
It's also worth remembering that the attack itself deals 42 damage. Like, every time it hits you, it makes it easier to trigger the second effect. Like, it's not even like, oh, it doesn't deal much damage, so, you know, oh, it's fine. Like, nah, man, it still deals, like, you know, it deals just under half of, like, if it reaches that enough times, you're gonna start saving, and, like, you don't need to make you save so many times.
This sounds like, the more I read this, it just sounds like DM bullshit. That a character you would make just to beat up players who are annoying you, but it's in the official guide. You know, it's in there.
Yeah.
I think it's also quite powerful narratively, because if you were to use this as the early character who, like, is a challenge that you can't beat, you basically have to fight him and he'll kill you. but you might just convince him to bring you back from the dead, or one of your characters.
And what if a player got this longbow?
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's very
very
Because
good
it's
shout.
the slaying longbow. You might talk about that a bit later when we're talking about the encounter and stuff, but just think about that, guys. Have a think about that one.
So I wanted to briefly just divert us to back to the annals of history in AD&D.
Sorry.
Please, I'm trying to make a point.
I'm sorry. I thought you were looking for a goof with that one.
No, this is very serious. So the slaying longbow, the origin of it is I'm going to just read the passage here, actually. It says that this is for the Solar. Each has a huge composite bow and various arrows of slaying. So for those of you who don't know, arrows of slaying are magic items. They're basically like, so for example, it might be an arrow of dragon slaying, and it's a enchanted arrow that's sort of, it's sort of got some sort of spell on it that means that it's very good at killing dragons. Or it might be, to take an example from what we're looking at here, it might be an arrow of angel slaying, and it'll deal more damage to angels. And like the slaying longbow described here, if they're brought below a certain hit point threshold, they might roll a Constitution saving throw, and if they fail, they will die. So kind of a similar idea, but like it's cool that they've gone from saying it has a kind of a quiver of magic arrows to saying it has a magic bow. It's actually quite similar, and I mean, like, as you mentioned, DC, like the idea that like if a player gets their hand on the slaying longbow, like, it's they're both good loot, like a quiver full of enchanted arrows versus a quiver. Sorry, not the quiver is pointless, but the bow itself is very cool.
Yeah.
But I think I'm as attracted to, or if not a little more attracted to, the idea of giving that longbow to a villain.
Yeah.
Which is cool, but also it's worth remembering when we're talking about all this that the Solar is a large creature, which means the bow is large, which means that like medium creatures are going to have a hard time wielding it. Maybe it's impossible, or maybe it just takes like way more setup.
Yeah.
Or the villain in question is a large creature, like maybe they're like a troll or like an ogre or something.
The ogre of PC slaying.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a new villain, guys.
PCs.
Yeah, so that's I actually think that's a fair point. That slaying longbow is actually a really cool piece of loot.
Yeah.
So DC, do you want to talk about the flying sword, because you mentioned it before?
Yeah, I'll talk about it. I kind of already mentioned already, but basically the Solar releases its great sword to hover magically in an unaccompanied space within 5 feet of it. So just at the start of the fight, I like to picture, he just takes out his sword, his great sword, and it just starts floating. It says here you can mentally command it as a bonus action, so it's almost like it's another unit on like the map that you have to fight, really. But interesting enough, I think if the sword takes any effect, the Solar is considered holding it. If you do conditions on the sword, it does it to the Solar. So there you go.
The last line in that is particularly interesting because it says the hovering sword falls if the Solar dies.
Yeah.
So again, going back to the old looty loots.
You get your own sword. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one thing I actually just want to mention, which is sort of it's kind of a small thing, but it's something I really like, is that bonus action. He has two choices. He can either command it to fly 50 feet and then attack, or he can command it back into his hand. And I like that the back to his hand doesn't have the same range limitation. So it could be anywhere on the battlefield and it just swoops back into his hand immediately. And then he leaps at a player.
Yeah, and then after he does like a slice at a player, he just throws it in the air again. This goes back to floating around.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So very, very
like
cool.
Thor's hammer kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Powerful.
Yeah, and like the other angels, the Solar also has a healing touch, and as we've described before, it is better. So the healing touch heals more hit points than the Planetars or the Devas. One thing that I thought I'd actually describe here, and this is just again a suggestion for any DMs who are thinking of including Solars in their game, either as enemies or as allies, it describes them as being the same as the Deva and the Planetars healing touch, in that it's whatever amount of hit points, and then they're freed from any curse, disease, poison, blindness, or deafness. So identical. I might, for the Solar and probably for the Planetar as well, if I was doing it, I might include the line "and restores any lost limbs." Because
that's a nice one.
because that's a relatively it's a relatively niche effect, realistically, right? Like most of the time, players don't lose limbs. It's actually fairly uncommon. But
he does already have it with the resurrection spell. So why wouldn't he have it with the healing touch?
Yeah, that's basically exactly what I figured. Like, I figure it's a small thing. It's not a big deal. As far as I recall, the spell Restoration restores limbs, and Restoration is either the same level or lower level than Heal, which is what this spell is based on. So it seems reasonable to me that like a creature this powerful can also put your limbs back on you. So like it's, and as I like, you know, I'm very happy to admit this. It's a very small effect, but I think it's also kind of, maybe you're running a game where the Solars are always on the material plane. You know, maybe they're constantly
just kind of roaming.
Yeah, exactly. They're constantly acting out the will of their god, but they never return to those planes. They always act on the material plane. And in that case, the idea that the players might seek them out specifically for their healing ability is kind of cool. Which is, like, we've mentioned it before, obviously, like the idea that because they can resurrect. But it would be cool as well as, obviously, like, you know, if you're still alive and you want your limbs back on you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a pretty reasonable thing to ask for.
I think so. So we've been very good, and now we get our dessert, which is the legendary actions. Do we want to say one each? And I'll do the top one because I've been talking about it so much.
Yeah,
sure.
So
I'll go for second then.
So, like the Aboleth, the Solar has a number of legendary actions. It says they can take 3, and they choose from the options below. Only one can be used at a time, and only blah, 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 blah. All the rules for them. But it doesn't matter because that's not what we're here for. That's boring. But the cool parts are the actual actions themselves. So the first one, Teleport. Oh my god, it's here. It's finally arrived. Merry Christmas, everybody.
It's there.
Daniel,
your wish is finally
my wish is finally granted. But unfortunately, it still doesn't actually do what I wanted to do. It's the Solar magically teleports along with any equipment it is wearing or carrying up to 120 feet to an unoccupied space it can see. So not a plane shift. It can't go home, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Just go home.
And it's not even like enormously impressive teleportation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually slower than he can fly.
Yeah.
Just to put that into context.
It's much quicker.
Like he can like, so the teleporting is interesting because in that sense it's for utility, I suppose. It's for outmaneuvering high level parties who are trying to do sneaky things.
Like he's got a perception of plus 14 there, like a path perception of like 24, I'd say, if you're going to do the actual math on that. So he can, like, you know, spot you, and then once he sees you, just teleport next to you, like, hello, I'm here, you know, I'm going to attack you. You like, don't sneak up on me.
I mean, I suppose, the other thing is, of course, legendary actions are basically, they're like reactions, you know, they're a similar idea that they happen on other people's turns. So in that sense, it gives him a lot of mobility because he can fly and then teleport almost as far, which means he has an effective speed of 250 feet per turn, 270 feet per turn.
But he can also take 3 legendary actions. So between each player character's movement, if he wanted to, he could teleport 3 times and go 360 feet before he even gets back to his 150 that he can do.
Yeah, he can do he can, you know, teleport all around and just like do an attack on each member of the party that you're in, so everyone gets a bit of meat, you know, a bit of medicine. Meat and medicine's two very different things. I don't know why I said.
Yeah, we're kind of mixing metaphors at this stage.
Yeah.
Okay, there's 2 more. I'll let you boys fight out who does what.
Tim, you can do the next one.
All right, cool.
That was a terrible fight. Sorry, go on.
Worst fight ever.
You conceded immediately. So the second legendary action is an action that takes up 2 actions. So it can't be used twice, but it can be used concurrently with the teleport. So it is the Searing Burst, which is basically an area of effect centered on him of a 10-foot radius. And anyone within the 10-foot radius has to make a DC 23 dexterity saving throw, which is pretty hefty.
Is hefty, yeah. Even for that high level, it's hard.
Yeah, that's like a hard difficulty DC.
Yeah, it's reasonable to say that's one that, like, some of the party is supposed to fail.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like they're going to take this damage, which is suggested as being 46 fire damage and 46 radiant damage, which is a pretty cool kind of thing. It's like divine fire just kind of explodes out of him.
Yeah,
it's also nice because it means that if your players have resistances, they're more likely to react. So they're actually more likely to take less damage when they're taking multiple damage types.
Yeah, but it's also half damage on a successful one, so you're going to get damage anyway from this attack.
But it's not that much. It's like the total would be 38, which is lower both than the longbow and the greatsword. So
yeah.
But obviously it's an AoE,
it's also,
so, you know.
yeah, as a legendary action. So if the party has kind of gotten into this thing of like, okay, well, we can fight him, but we can get into him, and if he hasn't used this legendary action before and they've surrounded him, he just kind of explodes out, and they might have to adjust how they're thinking
with like a
about
Super Saiyan blast. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
It, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's again a very, very cool power that this this angel has over the rest of the angels. On to the next one then there, Mikey.
Last but certainly not least, Blinding Gaze costs 3 actions. This one I thought was really cool. The Solar targets one creature it can see within 30 feet of it. If the target can see it, the target must succeed on a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or be blinded until magic, such as the Lesser Restoration spell, removes the blindness. So it's just, if you look at him, he can do this and just blind you. And that's just so extreme and so cool. Like,
but it's just like one character that is looking at him. He's just like burns its eyes out from a distance.
It's cool. It's very kind of it reminds me a little bit of the Angel of Vengeance power we talked about earlier. The idea that like you pick a player and basically the angel kind of bullies them a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit of bullying, you know.
But I also what I see this power is, to me, it's kind of interesting. It's not like, I don't think it's super exciting because, like, to be honest, to that level, players can probably get rid of blindness very easily. They brought eye drops. Final Fantasy reference.
Yeah.
But what I like about the power is the name.
Blinding Gaze.
Blinding Gaze. The fact that, like, it's not like, you know, something like he wiggles his fingers, like he just looks at you.
Yeah.
And you just go blind. And I just think like that's so. It's just like, you're not supposed to fight this, guys. It's like not a thing for mortals to do. Like you're out of your depth.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
He just gives it all like blue steel.
Yeah.
Or the magnum.
Yeah. Like even if it's a party you can take it, it's still a little bit of a funny nuisance of like, I'm blind again, god damn it. Like stop blinding me.
I think it's a kind of cool dynamic to the fight as
yeah,
well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if he's flying around and you like blind the ranger, you can't shoot him, you know? Like
Yeah.
That's his legendary actions then, and that's all the stat block. We kind of went through it all.
That's the stat block. So now we get to talk about the fact that this guy, he's got legendary actions, which means he's a boss monster.
Yeah.
He's definitely a boss monster.
Which, I mean, is kind of like apparent from the start. The fact that he has a bow that kills you in one hit, a sword that fights without him, you know.
Yeah.
A challenge rating higher than the level that you can achieve.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, I think it's reasonable to say, like, this is not your everyday bear.
So, like, I would put him after, you know, you fight the Deva and a Planetar, like a couple Devas and like maybe 2 Planetar, and then this guy's at the end of this adventure. This is the boss of this adventure because he's the one who's been leading all these angels into whatever is happening right now. But how will this boss fight go, guys? Let's talk about it.
Sorry, go on, Dan.
Go ahead, Dan.
So polite.
I know, it's terrible.
So I suppose what I'm thinking is like, I think like, we're kind of at a stage, like, so full disclosure, I have never run a game at this high level. I've never run a game that's gone above, like, I think I've never run a game that's realistically gone above like 10, 11 kind of area. So like, like, I think it's reasonable, like, even just from looking at things, it's reasonable to say it changes a lot. Those extra 10 levels change you a lot. Like, you go from being the best of mortals to being, like, you know, supernatural creatures. I think that's a reasonable assertion, right? Like, by level kind of 15 onwards, you're not really whatever you started out as. You're kind of something else. You've been doing this so long that you're almost, you are the legend that you're living, like you're living the legend that you're supposed to be. You know, you're bigger than life effectively. So So like when I look at a creature like this, and it's like, all I can think is like, boy, that's a lot of big numbers, because like I've never had a party be that high level and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But with all that said, I suppose like what I'll focus on is maybe how I might set the encounter, what I would see the Solar as sort of like how I would view them as fighting and stuff like that. I think I think sort of the really like obvious thing is the Solar has wings, so it can fly, and it can fly very, very fast. It can fly like, it's 150 feet around. That's unbelievable. That's 5 times faster than a normal player.
Yeah.
Assuming no modifiers. Which is really cool. And like I guess my instinct is I want to build an encounter that uses that ability to fly. And I don't know exactly how to use that.
Yeah. There's no disengage to them.
Yeah, that's on top of his teleportation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Teleportation probably wouldn't actually warrant a what's it called? Like a reaction.
Attack of opportunity?
Opportunity.
Yeah, no, teleport specifically don't, I think, is the rule, because the idea is like it's too fast.
Well, that would definitely kind of go the kind of strike, and then between its turn and the next turn, it kind of teleports away.
Yeah, so like sort of hit and fade tactics. And obviously its bow really encourages that. Like, you can, there's a, like, it's worth real, like, this is something I actually thought was kind of cool, is it's the maximum range on its bow is 600 feet.
Yeah. That's actually the same as a normal longbow.
Yeah. Oh, is it? I thought it was bigger because it was big longbow. I didn't realize.
Yeah, 600 feet is the kind of further distance it can go.
Oh, cool. Which reminds me of, I think, I don't know if it's true in 5th edition, but I think it's described in maybe Pathfinder or an earlier edition of Dungeons & Dragons anyway. It talks about storm giants, who are like nice giants, basically. They're good aligned. Oh. And it talks about how one of the ways storm giants will fight if they're defending their home is they will stand up on a hill, and they're huge creatures, so they have huge longbows. And they'll just stand up on a hill with a longbow, and because it's a huge bow, it has a range of miles, and they have incredible vision.
Yeah.
So they literally they like artillery bombard you, but like before you can even see them, like when they are a speck on the horizon, like arrows the size of redwoods start landing left and right, you know, and it's just like, oh, okay, we have to turn around and go home because I need a new pair of trousers, like, you know what I mean? So like I kind of like that idea, that like I think there's a kind of a really compelling start where like the angels just like, he's like 600 feet away, he's literally as far away as he can be, and he's just dropping arrows on these guys, and like before you can even start fighting, you have to start making some DC 15 Constitution saving throws, you know, like I think,
not to die.
I think that's really cool. Yeah. So I suppose like I might do something like that. Like that might be how I start the fight. I might have the angel just be really, really high up and just like watching and waiting for the players to approach. But then I guess if a lot of it depends on the context of the encounter. I'd love to set this fight in a castle. Because I feel like that provides a lot of dynamic terrain, especially the idea of like a turret from a castle, a flying turret. That's sort of maybe a fortress of angels or something like that. And the idea that the players are raiding it, or like they're holding it against a host of angels that like have fallen, or it doesn't belong to them, but they feel it does, or whatever the reason might be. I feel like that gives everyone an opportunity to kind of be up in the sky and stuff like that. Or I think another cool thing is just give the players a flying boat and just have them basically do like an air
hop
battle
on an airship and then have a bunch of angels attack them. You know, they hop on the deck and then the angels land on, or they can either land on or they hop off and fly around. I'm just thinking like a Final Fantasy-esque encounter where you're on the deck of the airship and then you're fighting the boss who's flying around the air. So that's what I kind of picture with that one.
Yeah, and if you wanted to have the bow and arrow be like they can shoot at you from a bazillion miles away, you could basically give them like a regional effect kind of tacked on, where they can just hit you with a bow from 100 bazillion miles away. That could practically be a regional effect.
Yeah, that's actually true. I mean, I'd probably say that, like, I think the rules are that if it's firing at long range, they have disadvantage, which is important because it does mean they're less likely to hit. And I would almost prefer that they miss.
Totally.
If that makes sense, because I feel like it's not as important that they hit, that they are firing. I think that's much more exciting.
Yeah. And you don't want your people to die like before they
Yeah.
get anywhere near the encounter.
Actually, on that subject, one idea I've just had there, just like because we were talking about the idea of them being shot from really far away. So the Solar has a slaying longbow, obviously, but Solars are generals. So give the Solar like a couple of, we can talk about like, let's say Planetars, but we're going to make them minions. We're just going to drop their stats a little bit, give them 1 HP, but they're Planetars in every other way. But give those Planetars bows, not slaying bows, just regular like large longbows, so that like, and so they're firing at the party as they approach, but you turn it into like, say, a dexterity saving throw to just avoid this hail of arrows to just keep coming.
Yeah.
Which I think would be very cool. And there was just something I thought about there, like sort of an interesting kind of, I guess, combo maybe. The idea that, like, let's say the party fight this Solar with an airship, and then the Solar casts control weather and creates a storm, and then the airship's, unflyable.
Yeah.
I think something like that would be really cool. Like, I feel like they've got such a great kit for like making wherever they are the arena they want to fight you in. Even stuff like, I think control weather lets you like make it incredibly hot and cold and stuff like that. Like you could change the weather on them. Like, I don't know, I just think like that's, and like even like the like torrential rain, like you can create like a monsoon effectively, like this stormy monsoon. Like he makes it this dramatic encounter just by casting control weather.
Yeah, I can't think of an area where fighting a Solar is good. It seems,
exactly.
You're right. He just makes any area into his battlefield.
Into his preferred battlefield. And like he also has, and this is actually something I think we missed when we were talking about his spells, because they're the same as the Planetar. He also has Blade Barrier. It makes a wall of swords.
Oh wow! Okay, more swords
swords.
more flying swords.
Here, I'll read out the spell description. You create a vertical wall of whirling, razor-sharp blades made of magical energy. The wall appears within range. The range is 90 feet. And lasts for the duration. The duration is concentration up to 10 minutes. You can make a straight wall up to 100 feet long, 20 feet high, and 5 feet thick. Or a ringed wall up to 60 feet in diameter, 20 feet high, and 5 feet thick.
That's more shield for him.
Yeah, so, like, or he can trap the party. He can cast it after they've got close, and then he traps them. And basically, like, it's difficult terrain, blah, blah, blah. But also, the first time you enter it, oh, Jesus Christ. When a creature enters the wall's area for the first time, or starts its turn there, the creature must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 6d10 slashing damage. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage. So
let me just take out my 6 d10s right now.
Yeah, like let me just, hey, can I borrow your d10s? I have to kill you with this wall. So like that's very exciting. I think again, with the only thing I will say is I think Blade Barrier doesn't play super well with flying because it's actually not that high, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can see that like if a party had access to flying because they were fighting a Solar, then you could very easily see that the Blade Barrier would do not a lot.
Yeah.
But I do think it's kind of a nice, I think it's a nice touch if, for example, the party decide, hey, we're going to fight the Solar somewhere he can't use his wings. Right? Like they trap him indoors and then he's like, okay. And he makes a Blade Barrier around the entire arena. Like, and then like he spends the fight, like he shoots a player with his bow. And then after that player's turn, he teleports outside the Blade Barrier because it's a legendary action. So then they have to choose between running through the Blade Barrier to get to him or doing nothing all turn.
Yeah.
Because the Blade Barrier gives so much protection that like they aren't going to hit him with range attacks. But we haven't talked about something. We didn't talk about this for Planetars either, and I'd like to do this because we mentioned it with Devas. What about if they were evil?
Yeah. Well, if they're evil.
Like, not just generally, but like as in,
a Solar of it.
They're a Solar of an evil god, or Solars can be evil, or maybe even Solars can be neutral. Like, I feel like, I mean, we talked about this with the Deva specifically. I talked about how, like, I'd swap all the radiant damage to necrotic and give it a big scythe, and, like, it's immediately much more iconic, right? Like, it's suddenly, like, that's a bad dude.
Yeah.
I feel like
Death starts playing.
Exactly. I feel like the Solar has enough, like, he almost has enough going on that he already is a bad enough dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you did have him as a fully evil guy, it would be terrifying because
absolutely,
it's just so much damage and like so many ways to kill you, and it's just like if the flying sword can be a flying scythe, and that's That's terrifying.
Just had an interesting idea that I'm gonna float with you guys.
Let's hear.
This is so okay. So let's say you've got a solar. Maybe they're lawful good, or maybe they're just lawful. So this solar has taken a town under its protection, or that's what it intended to do. But obviously, solars have what is it? They have it here. Divine awareness. The solar knows if it hears a lie, and let's say the solar decides lying is wrong, and it decides that because it has to be a creature of righteousness, everything that is wrong needs to be destroyed. So this solar stands in a tower in the middle of town, and from there it can see and hear everything. And if anyone speaks a lie or acts in evil, they immediately get an arrow through the heart.
Wow.
He's trying to protect these people from their own weakness.
Yeah. Well, like,
very good.
And then the party members would go up like, "Here, stop. Like, people can lie. It's fine. Like, no. Like, it's just
hey."
It's just then it's a conversation instead of like actual battle. You know, that it can be.
No, yeah, it doesn't have to be a battle. It can just be it's just an example of extremism, and it's an interesting way to explore that space.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Yeah, that's a cool idea. He would be able to see an entire town if he just stood in like high enough, you know, like because he has telepathy. He's got like, you know, far vision. He can fly around everywhere. You know, he has all those tools. So
maybe in that kind of idea, maybe the god has been slain through some like godly fights. Like the gods have been fighting among themselves, and maybe the god's been killed, and it has a bit of a crisis, and it doesn't know what to do, so it just really harshly enforces its last order from its god. Or it could be that the solars are rogue agents. Like, it could be any number of things. I wish I had more to say about these guys as evil creatures, but I think everything I said was kind of summarized in the Deva description. Like,
and just like simply the question, what if evil? And give that to listeners, you know.
Like, I think what if evil is valid, but I guess I feel like it's almost I wish there was like more I could do. I guess the only thing I talk about is like I mentioned before the idea of like, you know, the Angel of Vengeance from 4th edition. I think if I wanted to do that with the Planetar, I might swap their weapon for a great axe to emphasize the idea that they're an executioner. Which is a small thing, but you know, just mentioning it.
Yeah, and also like back to that teleportation thing that you mentioned first.
Yeah.
For the assassin guy, for like a Solar's legendary action, instead of like a regular teleport, you can give him that teleport where he marks you first, and then only teleports to people that he's marked, just to kind of give a little bit of like, be specific with it, and kind of a bit more. Be more personal.
Predictable. Yeah, that's true.
Instead of just teleporting anywhere, you know. But that's really it on Solar and just angels in general. You know, we talked about them a lot. That's 2 episodes.
Had a lot of meat and potatoes and quite a bit of dessert there, lads.
Yeah, we've had a lot to eat.
We've had our fill.
That's a lot of
our dinner.
I kind of mentioned this, I think, in the first episode. But like, is there anything you can think of specifically that like might be interesting in terms of having, say, an encounter with more than one of these angels?
Or like all 3 of them, or just like a couple
all 3 of them, or like I'm trying to think, is there anything in particular that I there is to go back to 4th edition, there is just one thing I thought I'd mention. Back at the very first angel, the Angel of Battle, has an ability called Chosen Foe, which is a little bit similar to that Angel of Vengeance power. It's similar enough, but I'll read it out here. So it's once during its turn, an Angel of Battle can illuminate an enemy it hits with its attack, bathing the enemy in light as bright as a torch, and granting the Angel's allies advantage against that enemy until the start of the Angel's next turn. So in other words, it's like the idea of like sort of, you know, it's like a tracer round, or like it's making it easier for everyone else to attack someone.
Yeah. I think there is a kind of low-level cleric or paladin spell that does something very similar.
Yeah, true. There's
like Radiant Strikers.
Yeah, and there's Fairy Fire as well, does something sort of similar.
Fairy Fire, yeah.
So yeah, it's certainly, but like it's only like just because if they were fighting as a group, you could use these abilities of them sort of like working together. I think other than that, there isn't really that much to say about them fighting together.
Yeah.
They don't really have. They're all very solitary, which makes sense. They feel kind of like that, you know.
Yeah, like maybe, you know, like the only thing I can really think about is like Deva, like sneakily being around as like humanoids or beasts and with their change shape ability and just kind of popping up during the fight, you know, like, oh, they've been around this entire time. Like, oh, what the hell? Shit. But that's the only thing I can really think about, because yeah, they're very distinct. Like, I would definitely have the Solar by himself, because he's definitely built up to be like a boss guy, you know.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even though he is described as being a general, I think he's much more interesting as a solitary enemy.
Yeah, they don't have much ability that they can kind of play off of each other. Like, they have basically just scaling.
Well, they have got telepathy, which means they could communicate with other players knowing. But actually, I've thought of one thing, and this is sort of this is a little bit of a deep dive. If you guys are willing to hop in my Nautilus with me. It's a bit crowded. Sorry, it's not really for 3 people.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's we'll go where you're taking
I'm
us
good.
then.
Just close the. I'm not going to underwater until you close that. Close the ballast. That's not what a ballast is.
We're going to run out of air.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I don't breathe.
All right, it's closed there, and let's punch in the coordinates and let's see where you're taking us.
All right. Don't mind those weird creatures. They always show up here.
Right. There's always a bigger fish. Do you remember that from the film The Phantom Menace, Star Wars, Episode 1?
God damn it, you got me.
Sorry, man. Anyway, let's hear it.
Go ahead.
Let's hear it.
No, that's okay. So actually, this is as I said, a bit of a deep dive. If you recall back in our previous episode about Devas, I talked about the different abilities of Devas in AD&D. The fact that there were 3 types and they each had a little bit of a mechanical flair.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one of those was a passive ability that said, creatures of the natural world will not attack this Deva. Do you guys remember this? I'm just making sure. I assume you do.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. Yeah. So, well, anyway, like it's historically part of the Devas, or you can just take it and make it up anyway because it's your game. Who cares?
Yeah.
But that idea, right? That idea that like creatures will not attack angels because they are like sort of not of this world.
Yeah.
That would work kind of well. This is sort of just say for example, if the Planetar used insect plague, and they could fight inside of it, but the players can't. I'll read out what insect plague does here. Basically, it's a 20-foot sphere, or 40-foot sphere. Sorry, 20-foot radius, and it's just full of insects, just full of insects for the whole duration, which is extremely gross, and the duration is up to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yikes.
So basically the idea is that when the area appears, everybody inside it makes a Constitution saving throw, and they take 40-10 damage on a failed throw, or half as much on a successful one, and then they have to make that save every time they enter the spell's area, and if they end their turn there. So this is kind of the idea before of like they can, the angels are making a space they can fight inside, especially because, and this is kind of a cool combination. You could, the Planetars, let's say for example we've got a Planetar and 2 Deva going after the party. Let's say it's effectively an assassination team, right? Let's say we've got that Planetar, we've given him the sign of vengeance power where he can pick someone and teleport next to them. And we've given the Deva and the Planetars all the ability to the rule that natural creatures will not attack them.
Yeah.
So they jump the party because the Devas can shapeshift into whatever the hell they want, and the Planetar can be invisible. They jump the party by the Planetar casting blade barrier and surrounding the party in a moat of swords, effectively. Inside the moat of swords, he casts insect plague. Ooh. So now the party have to either choose to stay inside the insect plague or leave and take the sword damage.
Yeah.
And then the angels attack them inside the insect sphere because the insects won't hurt them because of their rule that they won't be attacked by natural creatures.
Yeah. Kind of a compounding of effects.
Yeah, it's sort of like they sort of like I think it's probably something the players can get out of relatively easily, and the damage actually isn't that high, but it's a great shock and awe moment. Pretty exciting. I think that's it. I think that's the last thing we can mention.
Yeah, that's been angels. We're done with angels.
That's been angels. We're done with we're finally done with angels. I thought we'd never be done.
our epic series of angels.
I had a lot of fun. I actually thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'll be like, I think we said this at the start of Devas, but like angels aren't really a monster I'm that interested in.
Yeah.
But there's been enough hooks here that I'm like, angels are actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to be a consistent theme for this series.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's kind of the theme of this, like the
turns out the monster manual is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I get excited for the next episode, which is going to be our animated objects.
That's going to be an interesting one.
Yes.
We're downgrading a bit in terms of challenge rating.
Yeah, just a little bit, yeah.
But,
but it is another category with 3 monsters.
Yeah.
So
and animated objects we can probably talk about. Make our own.
We can absolutely make our own. That'll be a lot of fun.
All right. Well, guys, wow! Thanks for joining us for this long, epic series of angels. Angels. What's like?
If you made it through, well done.
Yeah. Well, whatever you're on, like us, leave a comment. We have Twitters there. Send us a message if you like it. Follow us. If you know someone who likes D&D and wants to play D&D and wants to know more about monsters, and just know anyone who likes us, share it around like the plague.
Yeah.
That's what I said last episode.
You did. That really sort of
even more apt this episode.
and as we mentioned before, if you have played any games where you've fought angels or made deals with angels, or run a game where you've used them, let us know how you used them and what you thought maybe you could have done differently, or maybe if you've had any new ideas.
Definitely, yeah. Podcast. Who knows? You might do like a super episode one day where we kind of go back and revisit for like a lightning round of each of the monsters we've done and kind of new ideas.
Jesus,
that would be cool. If you have, as I said last time, I really like the idea of this, but if you have homebrew monsters, send them on to us.
Oh yes, please do. Yeah,
we'd love
absolutely.
to talk about them in a special episode, like homebrew edition. But yeah, this is Creature Club then. That's all. So I've been Mikey.
I've been Tim.
And I've been Dan.
And stay cool.